students. In this class today, we are going to discuss the French Revolution. The French Revolution had been considered as one of the most tumultuous events of the 18th century. Edmund Burke, the English conservative thinker, called this revolution the first great ideological revolution in Western history. This revolution dissolved the old order, also known as the Ancient Regime in France. Let us have a quick look at some of the principal features of this old order that the revolution dissolved: absolutist monarchy, the divine right of the king to rule, control of the church over the social and political order, and the order itself was based on estates. The influence of the French Revolution was felt beyond France and Europe. The terms that we know today, such as democracy, treason, nationalism, all these entered the political vocabulary with the French Revolution. The revolution brought about sweeping changes in about every aspect of French society. This created one of the master questions for sociology that was to emerge in the next century, that is the 19th century. How was order and solidarity possible? The French Revolution shattered old dogmas and traditionalist feeling. French Revolution has been considered a product of the Enlightenment. Now, why so? That the belief in natural rights and natural persons, that is, individuals, belief in reason against religious and traditional dogmas, the uprooting or transforming of old institutions deemed irrational, such as absolutist monarchy, church, and family. What the French Revolution did, as we had already mentioned, that is the sweeping changes it had brought about. Now let us identify these areas one by one. Family, inheritance and property, education, church, and also with regard to church, transcendental authority, corporations, and calendar. Let us now look at in details the changes it brought about in each of these areas. Let us take first of all family and marriage. Family was among the first institutions to be drastically transformed, and the transformation was based on the principles of natural law and reason. What was the structure of family in pre-revolutionary France? It was a joint household with the patriarch commanding all powers. Property was jointly held under the strict control of the patriarch. There was no divorce possible because marriage was considered a sacred bond. So, what the French Revolution did was in 1792, it enacted the law that gave divorce legal status. It laid out the grounds on which divorce could be sought. So first, what it did was to make marriage a contract between two consenting adults, which could be rescinded, which could be broken if either of the parties was dissatisfied with that contract. The French revolutionaries argued that patriarchal customs were against reason, that the indissolubility of marriage was against reason, and the pre-revolution French family did not reflect the values of republicanism upheld by the French Republic. So, we would see that after marriage was turned into a contract and after divorce became permissible, in 1794, the number of divorces surpassed the number of marriages in Paris. So one could understand the overwhelming support, the popular support that the legislation on divorce had. In 1793, the Republic fixed adulthood at 21 years. That is, the child became an adult on attaining 21 years of age. Once the child attained adulthood, parents ceased to have the authority they once commanded over the child. Now they were young adults. The Republic gave strict limitations on paternal authority and claimed that the state alone had primacy of rights over the young. The family was now conceived as a small republic expressing the values of equality and individual rights. Following those principles, the Republic regulated relations between servant and master in the family. It placed these relations on contractual basis, not on custom, not from generation to generation, but purely a contractual one. Therefore, it dissolved the patriarchal unity of the family. But the dissolution of that unity was taken further through further legislations on inheritance and property. Family property that was joint and undivided and under the control of the patriarch was done away with. Evoking the principles of natural persons with natural rights, it was made mandatory for the head of family, to divide the property among his sons once the sons attained the legal age of 21 years. This further dissolved patriarchal control of the family. Now, property rights, it was considered in terms of republican values taken from the Enlightenment, that property rights are individual and property rights are not corporate rights. And therefore, in the debate in the assembly over whether corporates like the church could have authority or ownership over property, it was decided that only natural persons, that is, individuals alone, could own property, and the only corporate authority that could have that kind of ownership was the state. We have already said that paternal authority over the young adults were firmly curtailed. Once more, how it again broke the unity of the old family was through a further decree on property. The state decreed that illegitimate sons were now entitled to have a share in the property of the family. You can understand how devastating those changes in the institution of family and marriage. Now let us look at the institution of education and how the institution was changed. In pre-revolution France, primary education was under the joint control of the family and the church. Robert Nisbet says that universities earlier, that is prior to the revolution, were semi-autonomous ecclesiastical institutions. The Republic claimed that it had primacy of right over its citizens and particularly the young adults, that is, the future citizens of the country. Following Dato, that the necessity that follows food for citizens is education. They centralized and broadened education. So field of education came directly under state control and it was secularized. The church had no role to play in it. Education was not only considered merely a right, but it was transformed fundamentally into a political duty. We find the influence of Rousseau here. Centralization of education in post-revolutionary Napoleonic era continued, and Napoleon, as Nisbet says, took this idea of education as a political duty and as therefore necessary for building future citizens of the country. So Napoleon considered state control over education absolutely necessary. So therefore, for Napoleon, education was a machinery that could produce efficient subjects. The revolution was against all forms of transcendental authority. The only authority it considered legitimate was the one rooted in nature. Following this, we could say that the Republicans had little regard for the church. It plainly said that the state is not made for religion, rather, religion is made for the state, and that the state was supreme in all things. It decided that the state and state alone had jurisdiction on matters of public utility, and that was rooted in nature. It absolutely absurd that there should be a distinction between temporal and spiritual power. Loyalty of the citizens, the Republic demanded, was to be undivided loyalty to France. And here we could see the first modern origins of nationalism. Nothing was to come between the citizen and the citizen's loyalty towards the Republic. Only the Republic mattered. Initially, the Republican idea was not to abolish church or religion. What it showed, however, was the desire to regulate it and to harness the church to the necessities of the Republic. Like family, like education, the church too was supposed to demonstrate the Republican character. The Republic did away with all monastic vows. It abolished all religious orders. The authority of church over education and charitable bodies was taken over by the French state, and the state outlawed all charitable bodies because the state believed that the state itself was capable of taking care of its citizens. So why should we need charitable bodies? So charitable bodies were made suspect. Bishops and priests who were once selected by the church, and their appointment was based on the selections made by the church, that sort of a practice was done away with. What happened? They were treated like ordinary officials who were to be elected like any other ordinary official of the state. They were further not to take any other oath of allegiance except the one that was the allegiance to the Republic. They forced the bishops and the priests to be on state payroll, and the refusal of the church to accept these changes made them enemies of the people. A little bit of digression. What happened in the late 18th century in France, we could see it being carried over in some sense in modern Turkey under the rule of Mustafa Kemal Pasha. With regard to religion, it had ordered that the property become the property of the state, and all the clerics and all those associated with the functioning of the mosque would be placed on state payroll. So they were to become merely the servants of the state. Church in pre-revolution France owned large amounts of property. Now, the Republic confiscated that property. The church lost its prestige. More so, the church lost its economic power. The state decreed that only the state as a corporate body could have property rights. All other property rights rested with individuals who were the natural persons. So, based on natural law arguments, it is only individuals who exist before the law. They draw, that is, the individuals, draw their rights from nature. But corporations come into existence by the law, and therefore the rights of corporations are dependent on the law. So if the law takes away the rights of the corporations to property and to exist, then they simply do not exist and they simply do not have rights to property. So the dissolution of guilds and trade associations were among the early changes that were effected by the Republic. Why? Because it stood against reason, the guilds and such trade associations. Why did they stand against reason? Because they ended up restricting the choice of occupation. So abolition of the guilds and the trade associations was seen in consonance with natural law arguments, and this abolition brought about freedom of occupation. All existing associations were outlawed, and the law forbade the setting up of new associations. The state and the state alone was seen as the expression of the general will, and old associations and corporations were seen as corrupting this general will. Finally, we come to the section of of a calendar. What is with the calendar? What do we do with the calendar? We look up at the dates, we look up at the festivals, we look up at holidays. Some of the dates for us may be sacred. So therefore, the calendar actually regulates, is an important, if it does not fully regulate, let us say, but it's an important element in regulating our behavior. Now, the calendar was removed, the old calendar. Instead, we had the new calendar with new dates, new festivals, new sacred days. The new calendar came with new symbols, and the new dates for festivals were in recognition of the Republic. Why was it necessary to change the calendar? How do you otherwise free people? You see, Rousseau had made the statement that man is born free, but everywhere he's found to be in chains. Man, therefore, must be forced to be free. And the Republic was forcing its citizens to free themselves of the old prejudices, old memories, old customs that were embedded in traditional ways and symbols. And the calendar was one important reminder of the past. So therefore, the calendar had to be changed, and a new calendar inaugurating the new Republican age had to be brought in. Durkheim, we may say, considered the French Revolution, the Republic, its symbols, as the new sacred that replaced the old transcendental religion and formed the basis of a new civic religion. Let us now come to, and we will be coming to the close of our discussion, on the Reign of Terror. Following Rousseau, the French Republic intertwined power with political moralism. So Rousseau was to say that power without morality is murderous, and morality without power was sterile. So therefore, morality and power should go hand in hand to build a new people. How do you refashion a completely new society, refashion a completely new people from the old structure, from the old memories only by combining the new forms of power with the new forms of political moralism. And because power emerged from the people, it was, as Nisbet says, the depth and the latitude of power was limitless. It was rational and limitless. This allowed the Republic to step onto the reign of terror, where virtue and terror were combined as the basis of popular government. And this is what the main architect of the Reign of Terror and the French leader at that time who led the Republic. See, from the Assembly to the Convention to the Committee for Public Safety to Robespierre. But Robespierre seemed to draw his power from the people, rational and limitless. He argued that during times of peace, it may be virtue, but terror had to be the mode of popular governance, and terror had to be combined with virtue because it was a time of war, and France was at war with almost every other European power because France, the French Revolution, had a tremendous impact on all other countries in the continent. Now let us come and see what role the French Revolution had to play in the birth of sociology. We could see that there was a clear relation of the French Revolution to Enlightenment thought. Enlightenment thought lacked a concept of society. The changes brought about by the revolution very critically created a new middle class, which became a new economic force in the constitution of civil society. There was certain carryover of certain ideas and methods from Enlightenment and the Revolution into classical sociology, and we would find its clearest example in the works of Émile Durkheim, particularly his work on religion. The Enlightenment lacked the definition of society, a clear concept of society. For the Enlightenment, society was merely an aggregate of individuals, and the French Revolution also had given a kind of aggressive spurt to individualism. It was for classical sociology that emerged after these events to develop a concept of society. And the definition of society came as a totality that was over and above the individual. New theories about modern industrial society, its character and its future, were related to the question of the problem of order and the dissolution of the old society that had plagued sociology. How was order possible? And if it is a new industrial order, what were to be its characteristics? And what would the future be like for industrial society? These were the concerns that had bothered classical sociologists, and we find their reflection, the reflection of all of these in the works of, beginning with Saint-Simon, Comte, Spencer, Durkheim, Marx, Weber, Simmel. So therefore, we could see that the French Revolution, the Enlightenment, and sociology could be tied together, and sociology could not have emerged had these events not taken place. Thank you.